Over in Pennsylvania, the violence in video games debate has been kicked off yet again, despite most of us being over that shit in the mid-2000s. Rather than deal with gun violence by looking at guns or violence, politicians would rather lay the blame at the feet of practically anything else, and video games have still remained a popular scapegoat for old duffers who don't realise that a lot of other culture has happened in 15 years and they could blame something else instead. I think what infuriates me more than anything else is how dated it is to blame video games for violence. The times have moved on, granddads. Come on, blame fucking social media. That's what people are into now. That's the cause of society's ills now. Or, I don't know, Taylor Swift? Is she popular with the kids? I don't know. Look, I'm out of touch as well. I'm completely done for when it comes to keeping up to date with society and what the latest problems are. I don't know anything about pop culture these days. In fact, Taylor Swift's Shake It Off is the last time I knew a song was popular. I listen to ELO, but I'm not the one in charge of taxing things, am I? I'm not the one sat there trying to link school shootings and video games because that's more convenient than addressing a real problem. Now, regardless of what you think of gun control, I personally think guns should be under a bit of control. But regardless of what you think, right, look at a video game, look at a gun, and you tell me which one is more likely to be part of a shooting. Anyway, here's the headline as written by PC Games N, which I'm going to read verbatim because it just speaks volumes about the situation. Pennsylvania considers attacks on violent video games to help prevent school shootings. What? How does that work then? I suppose we better find out. This is going to be good. So, a Pennsylvania bill has been put forth by lawmakers over in Pennsylvania, and it would introduce a 10% tax on so-called violent video games. They're literally calling it a sin tax, which is incredible. Sin taxes are applied to alcohol and tobacco, so they're putting video games in with alcohol and tobacco. And the money would be used to fund the Digital Protection for School Safety account, the DPSA. And apparently that'll raise security measures and stop school shootings via magic. Because magic is what it's gonna fucking take at this point if you're not gonna address the actual issue. Republican State Representative Chris Quinn has introduced this bill called House Bill 109, and it would apply to any video game rated by the ESRB as M for mature or AO for adults only. Sales tax would still be included, of course, so the price of a standard video game would go to about $70. Quinn said this:
"One factor that may be contributing to the rise in and intensity of school violence is the material kids see and act out in video games. Rah, rah, rah."
He then made reference to a quote which I'm going to read in that voice I just gave him.
"Studies have shown that playing violent video games can increase aggressive thoughts, behaviours and feelings in both the short term and the long term."
Now that quote comes from the National Center for Health Research, who also said that, mental health issues, access to weapons, and many other factors can potentially raise the risk of violence. Chris Quinn did not acknowledge those factors. In the mid-2000s, we had Leland Yee in politics, and Arnold Schwarzenegger as well, even, trying to pin violence on video games and introducing bills like this that would basically try and make extra money off games under the guise of, oh, it's to stop violence. Jack Thompson, of course, made a career and then destroyed a career off the back of the violent video game debate that he stoked and lied about for many, many years. It was all made-up hypocritical bullshit, and Leland Yee turned out to be corrupt as fuck. But most politicians and pundits have moved on from games. They've been around for this long, they're an established part of pop culture now, they've just been accepted, and it can only really speak to the desperation of politicians like Quinn that they're still banging an old, worn, shit-stained drum. The fucko won't mention guns and their potential role in gun violence, and I only say potential role as a joke, because to have gun violence, you need to have guns. You don't need video games. There are actually politicians out there right now that want to talk about gun violence without talking about guns, which to me comes across as fucking absurd. It'd be like talking about Harry Potter without mentioning magic. It can be done. It shouldn't be. This isn't the first time Chris Quinn's tried to pull this shit. He tried it in 2018. And I'm not sure if any of you remember this, but the White House itself put out a little compilation of violent clips from video games robbed of context, as if that was some sort of evidence that video games and school shootings are inextricably linked.
Shit.
Bowman!
My favourite bit is the bit where a bloke gets a knife thrown into his head. I wonder which school shooter was inspired by that sequence. There's very little chance of this bill doing anything but failing. And I feel like many politicians pushing this line know that, because really this is grandstanding. This is posturing, putting on the appearance, the show of giving a damn, of trying to fix a problem. I've made mention of this before in Jimquisitions. If you give form to the problem, even if that form is a ghost, an illusion, something you've made up, but if you can give it a form, then you can give off the impression, the false impression, that you are fixing the issue. I am willing to bet my house on a syntax for video games completely failing to stop mass shootings from happening. You can make Grand Theft Auto customers pay for a raise in security measures all day fucking long, but that in no way is going to stop a violent person from getting access to an incredibly powerful weapon and opening fire with it anywhere they damn well please. I struggle to comprehend anyone in the world now sincerely believing that a tax on video games will prevent school shootings. Only a drivel-spouting idiot would believe something so incomprehensibly stupid. Ultimately, this syntax isn't constitutional. It's not constitutional because, well, politicians keep trying to scupper video games. They keep trying to put restrictions on them. They keep trying to charge extra for them as a result of their apparent violent influence. And time again, once more, since at least the mid-2000s, they have failed time and time again for the very reason that they're not constitutional. And that's the real fucking hypocrisy of this shit, because people would defend their right to have guns as part of the Constitution, and some of those people are willing to sacrifice another part of the Constitution, the bit about free speech, in order to protect their own interests. People claiming to care about the Constitution, but willing to sacrifice any part of it to serve their own interests. Now, don't get me wrong, the video game industry is a piece of shit. It's broken, it's exploitative, it's predatory, there are very real problems there. In fact, some people might be thinking of me as a hypocrite, because I've often argued that the video game industry should regulate itself when it comes to its excessive monetization that's only getting it in trouble. But weirdly enough, anything to do with the actual business tactics of companies, anything to do with them making obscene amounts of money, isn't something that a lot of these politicians are actually concerned about. You know, they don't want to talk about transactions, business models. They go right for the actual part of video games that constitutes free expression. And I think that says a lot about people like Chris Quinn. I think that says a great deal indeed. It certainly tells you what parts of the Constitution they consider important and which parts they don't. It tells you how far they're willing to go, up to and including making themselves look like complete and utter tools in order to find a convenient scapegoat that saves them having to do any actual work. And once again, I've got to say, it's so old. It's so old-fashioned. We're over this. We've done this song and dance before. It's tiresome. It's not that video games have no psychological effect on their players, okay? Video games do. Video games can inform our beliefs about the world, they can shape the way we view people and objects and events, but that's because video games are part of pop culture, and pop culture shapes all of those things. There are a lot of valuable discussions that could be had on the responsibility a cultural influencer has to the culture it's influencing. There are far more intelligent people than me that do that every damn day. But this shit this ain't that discussion. This ain't that discussion at all. It's infantile, reductive nonsense designed not to solve a problem, not to further a discussion, but simply to deflect. Go tell all of this bollocks to Leland Yee, Mr. Quinn. He's one of the handful of people left around who will actually swallow your shit. You'll be able to find your comrade in arms at the Federal Correctional Institution in Fort Worth, Texas.